I know I owe you an email back.
Hmm.
Lots of familiar faces on this. And we'll give everybody, we know folks join, man, the numbers are starting to jump. We have such ROI leads freight costs, that says. Yeah, freight's going up. I just was visiting a show this past weekend, and it's a what we'd call a heavy show. Concern about how much it costs to ship stuff. I don't know about the panelists here, but when you look at sustainability, I mean sometimes some even our exhibit houses are saying it's cheaper to throw the booth away. I'm like, but that goes against our sustainability. Jill said booth traffic. Yeah, attendance levels. Yeah. All right, welcome everybody. We'll give everybody another couple of minutes. The attendees are starting to jump. I know everyone just clicks in. It is just 2 in the east. We'll give everybody another couple of minutes. But like I said, my goal is to try to attend equality. Ooh, that's a great point. Yeah, it's one thing just to have.
That's a huge point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Panelists, any thoughts on that?
I can speak to that once we get into it. I had a huge awakening with the quality and how it definitely affects what we do when we get there. So,
Yes, Lord, answer your question. We will have a recording, but go ahead, Sarah.
I was going to say definitely quality over quantity, and that seems to be what's happening now.
Yeah, I mean, that seemed like that was part of the shift when we came back was, we were just sending, quality people. But Kathy, brand awareness, meeting customers and new leads. Ooh, sponsorship. Nancy. Oh, hey, Nancy. Good to see you. Sponsorship without exhibiting, which is a challenge because we don't allow that at our event. How about anybody on the panel? Is any experiences on that, just sponsoring versus exhibiting?
Yeah,
I think.
yeah,
Go ahead.
we've done a few of those where it's just about networking and meeting again quality contacts.
yeah, same here. We were at a show that the quality didn't really match our audience. And while we were terrified to kind of pull out because the fear of not being seen, and what does that mean? But we pulled out and worked with one of the publications to sponsor an event that they had so we could still have a presence without necessarily bringing the whole show. 10 years later, we're back in, but that's only because the show evolved. So,
yeah, it was an interesting comment. Hey, Adam, I'm sorry I missed you at TSN Awards. I'd love to see you and Susan. All right, looks like I'm gonna give everybody like one more minute because attendees are starting to jump, and I want to get started because there's already great questions. Yeah, I think that's a challenge for a lot of associations. I know some you can't sponsor without being an exhibitor, and some associations, or being a CEM faculty, I get caught up in the whole like suitcasing. So I see a lot of shows that just saw it this past weekend where you allow someone to attend and they're out passing out business cards when you got an exhibitor who's invested in the show. I struggle with that. Gene says ROI due to increasing costs. Yeah, that seems to be a pretty uh, uh, theme. We'll cover that. All right, I'm going to allow the people keep joining. Yeah, Nancy says that too. I'm going to allow people to start coming in, and I'm just going to get started because, like I said, we have a lot of content, and I know some of these questions are going to come up. Yes, you will get a recording within 72 hours of this webinar. Daria, who's my esteemed colleague, will help me package all this up today. And we'll try to get this to you by the end of the week, and we'll share it out in a link in the post-show email. Don't panic if you have issues. I find, luckily now, most of us are getting better at Zoom, except how many times do we still go to a meeting and say someone's still on mute? But try logging out, logging back in. That usually fixes it. Again, we want this to be interactive. These panelists have given so much of their time, and I greatly appreciate that. It will be hard to get this in an hour. I know if we have a little bit of extra time, we'll stay on for more questions. I will try to put those through. I have more questions than time today. But again, make it interactive, and feel free to interact in the chat. If you see something and you want to respond, feel free, because as event professionals, we all get better by helping each other. So All right. I would be remiss. We've got people from all over. Many of my friends I see on here, lots of familiar faces, but we get people from all over the place that may not necessarily know. I'm not anywhere near the sales team. They keep me away from that team, probably for good reason. But I do want to make sure that you realize that A to Z Events is our event management software. The leader in trade show and event management. We help you boost revenue, accelerate boost sales, and really work to engage attendees. And with over 1,000 trade shows, conferences, and association events across the globe, we'd love to help. GTR is our most exciting thing going on right now. It's our event registration platform, check-in, badging, printing, attendance tracking, lead retrieval systems. A lot of folks don't even realize we have this new technology. And just in case you also don't know, Personify, our parent company, includes association management systems, member engagement solutions, job boards, and much, much more. So enough of that. I'm going to move on to the rest, but it's really important to know where we bring so much perspective from the events business and the association business, because that's a lot of our audience today. I just mentioned it. Please be interactive. Chat with us. Have fun. Chat with each other. We've turned all that on so you can do that. So there we go. All right, let's get started. In the interest of time, I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves. They were kind enough to send me some photos from their sponsorships or activations, and I will let them introduce themselves instead of me reading, because you guys hear me yakking enough. So Sarah, take it away.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Rush, and I am the head of event sponsorship at Sage, and I've been at this company for 23 years. Sage is a software company and has solutions for startup to enterprise businesses. And then I also have a podcast called Event of Entrepreneurs for the last 3 years that focuses on helping entrepreneurs build community, make an impact, and grow their business with events and sponsorship. So I'm so happy to be here.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for joining us again. Darius put the link in the podcast. It is a great podcast. She gets so many guests to get really great conversations going. So thank you, Darius, for putting that in there. Randy, take it away.
Sure. So my name's Randy Knight. I'm with a company called Keyless. We are a cybersecurity company headquartered in Tel Aviv, Israel. My role in the trade show is usually to be the subject matter expert inside of the booth. I've been in technology sales for over 20 years and love being a salesperson and interested to see what the questions are going to be.
All right. Thank you, Randy. There's your team. Mark, take it away.
Yeah, hello, everyone. My name's Mark LaFleur. I'm the communications lead for Turf at Syngenta, which is an agriculture company. My main customer is either a golf course superintendent or a lawn care operator. I've been with the company for about 11 and a half years. I work to build the booth and make sure that I work with our exhibit company and our associations to make sure everything comes together nicely. I do everything from a 50 by 50 to a 20 by 20, and then working with our sales team to do smaller pop-up booths like you're seeing in the picture right now. Previously, I worked with an ad agency for about 6.5 years and worked in regional theater doing events and marketing and PR in regional theater for 6.5 years. So looking forward to today's session.
All right, like I said, that's what's so great about this audience. We've got such a wide range of expertise and experiences. Adam, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Adam Saad. I'm founder and CEO of Tech Stack Advising. We are a 2.5-year-old bootstrapped startup IT services firm helping our clients realize the value of contact center in a fraction of the time. I'm probably a little bit of a unicorn in this group. What you're seeing there on the slide, the picture, that was our first ever booth at our first ever trade show. So I'm brand new into the exhibiting trade show world and excited to share our experience.
Yeah, I definitely, I will tell you too, Adam really has some unique perspectives, and he's that exhibitor that you want to grow into some of the others here. So that's what, again, I love this audience. I will say too, just a reminder, these folks are representing themselves, not necessarily the company. I made that promise so that way they can say what they want, especially because some of these folks may or may not have the show that they exhibit at on this webinar. So we wanted to make it there. So I'm gonna actually turn off the screen so you can get a better chance to see us all. All right, I'm going to start. Adam, I'm going to start with you because, you sort of have that unique perspective. What did 2023 look like for you in terms of exhibiting and sponsor? Like, what were some of the highlights? What were some of the things you took away with this year?
Yeah, for us, I think it was a year of firsts. My wife's big in the event industry, and she's been telling me forever to start going to trade shows. And it had always been a fear of mine for several reasons. One, I'm not, even as a salesperson, a founder, I'm not an extrovert. And the second fear that I had was a big investment, right? We're bootstrapped. We don't have any funding. We don't have VC. We don't have PE money. We don't take loans. So we're all self-funded. So we were really nervous about getting into trade shows and exhibiting and putting forth that investment. But the year of first has absolutely paid off. I'll say in our first event, we had massive success, way more than I ever thought we would. So we're really happy about that. I call these the Glengarry leads. These are all the business cards that I collected from the conference. And yes, we wanted business cards rather than the scans because to us they were more personable. We could write our notes down, but yeah, huge success, 60 qualified leads. We've barely gotten through the lead list and we've already built over 7 figures of pipeline from that conference. So amazing conference for us. And we're happy we did it.
Nice. Well, I'm going to stay for you one more second. Something that you shared in our sort of pre-meeting. What's important to you when you're looking at like these trade shows? What's important?
Yeah, I mean, everyone said it in the chat. ROI was really the only thing that mattered. I think when you asked me the first question, what am I hoping to get out of the conference? I think I dropped a 4-letter word. I mean, I better get ROI from the conference with the massive investment that we made. I would say number 2 is making sure that my ICP, my ideal client profile, making sure that they were going to be at the conference and making sure that we have the ability to connect with them face to face and have the opportunity to pitch our services.
So Mark, what about your experiences this year? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I'd say, this was our second year back after the pandemic, and I saw a lot of folks really eager to come back to the trade show space. So I think for our bigger show, our 50 by 50, we were very pleased with the attendance. On our smaller booth in the lawn care industry, this was only our second time being back at the show. We had been absent for the show for about 10 years. We talked earlier about quality over quantity, and the show that we had been at had, low registration. I think you could get in for like $50 or something like that. And this show is over $1,000 to just attend for participants who attend. So that intrigued us and brought us back to that space. In the first year back, I wasn't really thinking about or taking the right approach to making sure that we were focusing on those higher end customers. And we took the same approach from the masses. And we were doing an enter to win for a solo stove. And I had one guy come up. I tried to get him to enter, and he said, thank you very much, but if I wanted a solo stove, I'd just go out and buy one. So now that I came back this year in 2023 and we realized that it was really about quality, we took a completely different approach. We increased our booth driver by 400% by taking a very different approach, being a lot smarter about it. And so that was a very big positive and a big win for us.
Cool. Sarah, then I'll come to you, Randy. What are you seeing this year? What's some of the takeaways? And then we got Amy's asked a great question. She's ahead of me, but how are you measuring ROI? But go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, so I'm going to come to this with the perspective of selling. I sell booths and sponsorships for our internal events. So we've seen an increase in revenue overall this year. Sponsors investing more year over year and really upgrading to higher level packages. And then definitely a focus on adding on a la carte sponsorship. So things that are experiential, like networking lounges, headshot lounges, speaking opportunities, really things that make a difference to the attendee experience, and then being able to connect with those attendees.
Randy, what about you?
So what was the question again? I'm sorry.
What did you really see this year as you went to events? Some highlights.
So I guess the highlights for us were last year we had gone to a lot of events where back to, the right personas. Are we talking to the right people? That was our experience in 2022. We were not talking to the right people. And as part of a startup, we're always experimenting, trying to figure out what shows we should be at. There's RSA, in cybersecurity, that's the largest show, and should we spend money to do that? It's hundreds of thousands of dollars by the time you get people there and do the sponsorships and whatnot, and you get lost in the noise. So we started doing a lot more of the boutique, very focused on the developer community or the chief information security officer community. So getting very targeted on who we wanted to go talk to was a big change for us in 2023.
Well, it seems like a general theme I'm hearing is, again, very more targeted, smarter about your investments. Let's get into the harder questions now. Let's talk a little bit about budgets next year. How are you evaluating when you look at shows for next year? What are those things that this audience, and I see lots of folks here that probably want to know, how are you picking your shows? Are there some winners? Are there some losers? And if they're a loser, well, I hate that word. If they're not on your winners list, why so? Anyone jump in to feel like how you're making those decisions?
Yeah, I want to hop in here with this one. We had a happy accident happen for us. We exhibited at a very niche conference a couple of weeks ago, and it was a user group for another technology company. And during the time of the conference, the big call center show was happening in another city. Everyone that we talked to said, go to the call center show. Everyone's going to be talking about call centers, which is what our business is. One of our clients asked us to go to the niche show. And when we went to the niche show, what we found was that none of our competitors were there. Nobody was talking to the CIOs, the VP of IT, the SV. No one was talking about call center. And because we were at that niche show, when we engaged with these leaders, they looked at me and said, hey, no one's talking to me about this. You're the only person I'm going to give my card to, because no one's talking to me about this. So we had our pick to have these engaging conversations. We didn't have to differentiate ourselves against our competition. So next year, how are we picking the shows? We're picking the shows where our competitors are not. We're not going to the just call center shows.
Others, you want to jump in? What the ones that are not making the cut? What is it that's making the impact in your decisions?
Well, as I said earlier, we were a part of a show that we abandoned for about 10 years because while we would get literally hundreds of prospects, they weren't actually our customers. They were at the trade show floor. They were there, but we were too expensive of a product for a lot of them. So we abandoned it. We came back to this other show that I was just talking to you about. And this past year, not only did we increase the folks that participated in our booth driver by 400% once we took the right approach, I talked to the sales team because I'll admit while the attendance was up some from the previous year, we didn't have necessarily a ton of really solid conversations. I'd probably say about 50 in a full 2 days. But our sales team said that was by far the best trade show. And some of these people have been in the industry for 25 years. That they said it was the best trade show they'd ever attended because of the quality of folks that were there. People ready to buy, people interested in what we were offering and what we had to say. So to me, again, that whole, what is the quality of that customer means everything.
Well, let me ask, because I'm going to piggyback on that. Alexander asked, the ideal candidate audience is obviously a big one. What do you need from the planner organizer side trying to sell you a sponsorship to identify if our audience is the ideal client? And I'll hear it from you guys. I'm also here, Sarah, how do you manage that? How do you communicate that right ideal client?
Yeah, I think for our events, because the sponsors and exhibitors for our events are our partners, so they know that ideal client is going to be there. I think it comes to also with, the challenge with projecting the attendance levels and just making sure that you're very clear and honest about your numbers. You know, you're not dropping in, we're going to have this attendance, but that includes 500 of the exhibitors that are already there. So I think for our group, they know it's the right target group for them, but it's just being very clear and honest about those numbers. And then, you know, what we can do to attract them is like, we're just having a lot of conversations about, you know, co-creating sponsorships together for our higher levels, like starting from scratch and asking the right questions, like what is their goals for this event? How are they going to measure their ROI? What is the outcome they want? And how can we build those packages for them that matches that?
What about others? What are you looking for? Do you look at the prospectus? Are you looking for a phone conversation? I see Mark shaking his head. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think the prospectus is huge. I told you we completely changed our approach from year 1 to year 2 of being back at this show. But it not only helps me as an organizer of what is our approach going to be this show, it helps me with communicating to our sales team, because they are not forced to come to our show. And if they don't understand the quality of the customers that are coming, it's hard to get those salespeople there. So to be able to have a well put together prospectus that we can say, these are the type of people that are coming, it is aligned with who we are, and you're going to have some of those good conversations, means all the world, again, as both an organizer and recruiting sales team.
Anyone else want to weigh in before I move to the next question?
I just think getting on the phone as well. You know, we have our prospectus, but just keeping that conversation going all year long and really nurturing that relationship. So when it's time to sell with your prospectus, like they know you, and, you know, it's not just like all of a sudden you're popping up for sales.
And I think you brought up a really important point. I mean, I think, again, the days of pumping up numbers with, you know, the loading dock staff, I think is ingenuine and never pays off.
Exactly.
Well, I know, you know, I want to be careful with this topic, but how are budgets looking next year? How are you, you know, I mean, a lot of us are in budget season. I'm in budget season myself for trade shows and events. You know, how are you looking at trade shows compared to other marketing investments? Because I think a lot of organizers that are on this call are saying, what are we competing with? So what's our audience competing with in terms of your marketing dollars in 24?
Well, I think that what the larger shows are competing with are these boutique, very targeted events. We've pivoted, not 100% toward that, but we've pivoted to allowing our individual sales leadership in each of the geographies to control some of that budget, which is not normal. Mostly that's coming out of marketing, right? And so we are certainly starting to embrace the bespoke boutique kind of trade show. We're also doing, you know, a little bit different, but we're doing these dinner events that are, you know, well organized, that have the exact people, the personas that we want to talk to, and in some cases, the exact companies we want to talk to. You know, because, you know, we're relevant to. Even though we're a very small startup, we're relevant to a lot of the Fortune 500 companies. And so getting access to that CISO, that Chief Information Security Officer, is paramount to us.
Others? Mark,
yeah, I can. I just wrote a breakup email to a marketing agency we were very much considering. So I'm happy to share the numbers. So the trade show we did a couple of weeks ago, it cost us all in $22,000 for a 10 by 10 plus travel, food, dinners, all the fun stuff, right? You know, to me, I was like, okay, if I can triple down next year and spend, let's call it $70,000 and generate $5 million worth of pipeline, how does that compare to a marketing agency? And the investment for a year might be $200,000 plus ad spend, plus everything else for maybe it works. You know, we all know attribution is so hard. I can 100% attribute pipeline to the trade show. I can't necessarily attribute digital advertising and online social media to pipeline. Can't do that. So for me, as a bootstrap startup, and I'm the one looking at the P&L every day, to me, it was a no-brainer. To me, trade shows is very high leverage.
Nice. I saw some thumbs up. I have to tell the story of when I first met Mark. I in a room full of his competitors, I called out how kick-ass he is in terms of marketing for a trade show. So it's lucky we're still friends. But I will say, Mark, I think you're someone that I see as a company that doesn't just look at the trade show in a vacuum. You guys, I mean, I showed you build web pages. I mean, you really, integrate in a sort of omni-channel, to throw out the buzz term, marketing term approach. Can you share a little more about that? Because I think you guys are probably looking at every angle.
Yeah, so for our larger show, we build a website that talks about all the different sponsorship opportunities, all the different education pieces that we're involved with. We include usually some sort of a booth driver campaign to get people to the booth where they can enter to win. We usually even have a contest that goes 2 weeks before the show to really start building excitement up to the date of the show, and then a different contest during the show, so that it's not just spending all this money for 2 days, that we really try to make it like a month-long event. We, our show is usually the first week in February, and our webpage usually goes live the 1st of December, so that there's opportunities for media to cover it in their January issues. When it comes to sponsorships, we are not a slap a logo on a sponsorship and call it a day. We are very much partners with, and I can share a link to the website in a little bit. But we work with the association, as you said, Rich. We always have what's called the Industry Advisory Council with our association, where about 10 months before the show, eight months before the show, they take about 15 companies, bring them out to the city where we're exhibiting, especially when it's a new hall. It's important for us to go and see all the different opportunities for signage and sponsorship. But then we really, as a advisory council, again, with my competitors, we work to help guide the association with where we feel like we need the show to go. But yeah, that website is definitely a big piece of making sure that we get a bigger bang for our buck, and it's not just 2 days.
Sarah, what about you seeing in terms of sponsorship? And again, I think Mark brings up a great point. I think the days of just slap a logo on things and hope is over.
Yeah, I wanted to add on what Mark said about, extending it past the event. So we try to do a lot of benefits with pretty much all of our exhibitors are called sponsors, and we try to do benefits in addition to the exhibit space, especially pre and post. So not everything is measured at the event. There's things that are going to be successful happening before and after, whether that's webinars or we're doing co-creation with their teams on joint PR and social media, but we really look at how we can build in, that year-long partnership with them. And definitely long gone is the days of just logos on signage. We do have the typical things like, banners, billboards, things like that, but we try to do a lot of cool activations that are going to make the event better, and that, have, when you ask the question, are they going to miss that when it's gone? Are the attendees going to miss this? And if they're not, that's a really cool activation that a sponsor could do that's going to bring value to the event.
Molly commented, they wish there was a Mark at all of our trade shows. I would agree. Well, let's talk a second. I want to go back to this question that was asked earlier, and I don't want to skip past it. So, now you're looking at prospectus, we're looking at sponsorship, and looking at exhibiting. How do you measure ROI? And what does ROI really mean to you? And I'm going to ask each one of you, what does ROI mean? Because I think we're all struggling. That's a nifty word we throw out. What does it really mean for you guys? Randy, you want to start? What does ROI for you guys look at, when you're evaluating these events?
Yeah, for us, it's actionable contact, actionable conversation. If I have, a Fortune 1000 company come up to me and just want to grab the little gorilla or the trinket or whatever that's on my table, okay, fine. And there's a lot of that. But what we're looking for is the number of actionable leads that are true leads. They're not fluffy. They're not somebody just, taking a badge scan so they can grab. We use these little stuffed gorillas, and they become quite popular, especially in the developer community.
I like that word actionable. Adam, how about you?
Yeah, similar. I mean, for us, it's all about the dollars and cents. How much are we closing as a result to our attendance at the trade show? So, I mentioned earlier we didn't really do too many badge scans. We only collected the information of people where we had great conversations with that were qualified to maybe purchase our services. So if someone was not so qualified, too small, not really the decision maker, say, hey, have a nice day. I hope you enjoy the rest of your show. So qualified leads collected, then into of those qualified leads, what was our conversion rate to actually have a meeting to pitch our services? And then what is the pipeline progression of those? How many did we get to proposal stage? And of those, how many did we actually close? So it's only been a couple of weeks for us, and the data is extremely promising for us. But as the business owner, the person shelling out the money, we're bootstrapped. How much are we going to close? That's all I care about.
Good answer. Mark, Sarah, Mark.
Yeah, I think we're in a very different space. It's, our biggest show. So we have what's called an early order period that runs October through the beginning of December, where we do probably about 75% of our sales for the year during that time. So our first show, as I told you, is usually the first week in January. So it is not a very hard-hitting, hard sales show for us. We've just hit them really hard. So for us, it's, I think, two things. The show is an opportunity to connect with customers and show our leadership. But in addition to that, it's an opportunity to educate our customers more. So we always have some sort of a booth driver, which is part fun, part educational, and you participate and you get something. During the pandemic, it was actually a really eye-opening experience for us. We did a choose your own adventure video, which could be potentially up to 8 minutes long. And normally at an average show, when we go to a show, if we get, somewhere between 175 and 250 people to engage in our booth activity, I feel like that's a good measure. During the pandemic, we had over 2,400 people watch this video. Over 1,300 complete the video, complete our form with an average watch time of 4 minutes and 40 seconds. So for me, those are the kind of things that I measure at a show that comes right after selling is how can I educate them? How many people took the time to learn about who we are, what we have to offer? So that's kind of how we look at our bigger show. Our smaller show is all about having those really good quality conversations. So we had a booth driver. Education is huge at most shows, and it's very big at this show. So we did a tiny little notebook with a QR code to take our quiz, answer 6 questions. And at the end of answering those 6 questions, we spit out products that we thought, because we have, over 30 products in our portfolio. It's too much to get into them at the booth. So we recommended 3 products that they would suit them. And they had to bring that to the booth. They had to scroll through the email. And by scrolling, I could see which products were selected and have a conversation. And most of them came to just come and get their Apple AirTag that we were giving away. But I was like, oh, okay, I see XYZ products were selected. Let me talk to you a little bit about it. And it was those really good conversations that we had. And that's ended up how we were measuring. We've gotten away from the booth scans and the badge scans. It's just we used to end up with hundreds of these things, and they weren't necessarily real qualified leads. They were leads, not qualified leads.
I'm proud to say I have a Syngenta AirTag myself, so thank you, Mark. Go ahead, Sarah.
To what Adam said, definitely the quality conversations and then the lead conversions is what I hear from our sponsors and exhibitors. And also the meetings and connections they're having with our Sage leadership team at the event, because since they are partners, it's how are they moving their business forward in general with our company. So having executive involvement, like we do an outreach program where the executives go and visit every booth and they take photos and post to social media. So just the recognition by the executive team and colleagues at our company is huge for them as well. But when it all comes down to it, it's going to be like the conversion of those leads.
I feel like that whole conversation, which I'm going to encapsulate a little bit, goes back to your point, Sarah, about having a phone call. Because, you all said ROI was different for each of you. And I think that's what, we as event organizers and show folk need to understand that it may be different across the board, and how we activate and how we create on that it's going to take a phone conversation. And I know, because you know what, exhibitors don't read. Sorry guys, you don't. See, y'all know,
Well, I do have an
Okay.
observation. When we're having these conversations with a good prospect, somebody that we really want to engage with, as a small startup, we can't afford, the big footprint where we can have a little spot where we can sit down and at a bar or whatever and have a conversation. And a lot of times what we'll end up doing is just going in, finding a table somewhere to have finish the conversation. And when I was with large companies like Hewlett Packard and Cisco, we had those spaces, right? But small companies like ours, we just can't afford it. So having some place to go and that's a little quieter than the showroom floor would be wonderful. I know it costs money, but it would be I think a draw for smaller organizations. It might not be your Hewlett Packards and Cisco's may not be super happy about that, but it helps the smaller guys out.
No, that's a great point. Yeah. Let's shift gears a second. I feel like there's been a lot of talk here and there, but I know some of you, since I've spoken with directly, are seeing prices increase. Some of them are jumping significantly. How do you manage, as small companies and big companies, when event organizers come back and have really started to increase prices for whatever reason, inflation, labor costs, or whatever? How does that impact your budgeting? And again, I know some of this because some of you have reacted talking about you just can't double your prices overnight. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
I can share one. One thing that I would say as an association, if you think you're doing your customers a favor by not increasing sponsorship costs for a decade, I would suggest you take a different approach and do smaller incremental increases. So I love the folks that I work with at the association. They've become my friends. And I think they've worked to do me a solid to make sure that that they're not increasing costs. But it came to this year, and it was, with inflation and the fact that one of our sponsorships hadn't increased in 20 years. And obviously they had to start increasing costs. So all of a sudden we had to take a hard look. While our budget is staying flat, it's not getting smaller. But that obviously makes our world smaller of what we can be a part of when all our costs go up. So unfortunately, I shared the chat and the link, and you can kind of see, and actually there's one missing from this list of all the different things that we participate of adding things to your calendar. So we actually had to drop one of our sponsorships. And so the good news is, we're able to keep our budget still fairly flat with dropping it. The association does have an opportunity to go out and make that money with one of our competitors. But to me, I would highly recommend slow increments. I mean, a lot of us, especially when you're talking about larger shows, I think it might be a little bit different for Adam, but larger shows where we're talking about 50 by 50 or some of these places that have their own zip code. If you increase something by, $1,000 a year, it's not going to impact us. But you increase something by $15,000 in 1 year, that all of a sudden makes us take a really hard look. So, unfortunately, we had to drop a sponsorship this year.
I think it's important to, as you mentioned, we need to really go very early with these sponsor packages and exhibit packages so they can budget accordingly, because we've definitely been in that situation as a company that is raising prices. We try to do it in those really low increments, and we had to increase prices this year, but we wanted to go out early enough with a prospectus so everybody could budget for that and understand. And it really is those small increases based on inflation and things like that. But I think that's one of the big important parts. If you are going to raise prices, let people know far enough in advance so they can budget accordingly and make that decision.
Agreed. And one other thing that I'll add to that is, if you do have a large increase that you need to make, find ways to offset it and make it valuable for them. It doesn't really cost you that much to add, hey, we'll give you 2 free ad spots in our association magazine over the course of the next year. It's not any hard cost for the association, or very little hard costs, but for me it makes a big deal, and it helps me then go make the case of, yes, this increased by $15,000, but look what they're giving us in exchange to make up for that. So it makes us take a hard look and consider keeping some even when costs are going up.
Adam, I saw you unmute. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just my odd perspective here is look at your identity. Look at yourself in the mirror and decide what kind of show you are. Are you a software company with a show, and your software company is the revenue and profit driver of your business, and then you have a show? Or are you a show first, and that's your revenue and profit driver? If you're the former, in my opinion, if you're a software company, the show is goodwill. It's goodwill to your partners. It's goodwill to your customers. It helps your customers and partners purchase more from you anyways. Don't go nickel and diming us and raising your prices if that's not your core business. But if your whole business is a show, go for it. I'm a capitalist. Make more money.
Well, Randy, I think you bring up a great point about some of the things that you can offer, smaller companies. I mean, startups. What are the things that have stood out to you, any of you really, about enticing these smaller businesses? Because we know as trade show organizers, typically it's that second or third year that an exhibitor gains enough traction. But what is it? Is it exhibitor education? Is it, what are the things that are going to, attract you, especially some of you who represent these, bootstrap startup companies? What might get you motivated to go to a show? I'd love to hear from Randy and then Adam.
Yeah, I think it's networking opportunities. Sure, the happy hours are great, especially if they're on the trade room, trade show floor. Those are great. But, also, other types of networking, maybe even some sort of a fun event in a different area. But anytime we can, network and socialize with the personas that we're interested in, helps us with building that connection.
What about you, Adam? I think I'll use the phrase that when we spoke, you said, make it easy.
Make it easy. So value can be defined as high perceived likelihood of your dream outcome divided by time, effort, sacrifice, right? So absolutely, make it easy and give me a high perceived likelihood of value, or achievement. So we talked about the prospectus, making sure our ICP is there, making sure the attendees are there, making sure there's going to be good conversations to be had. But don't make it so hard for me to exhibit, especially as a first-time exhibitor with limited resources. Make it easy. Give me a package. Give me a step-by-step tactical list for me and my team to manage. We're not exhibitors. We're not meeting planners. We're not organizers. So if you can make it easy and lower the barrier to entry, that will entice more first-time exhibitors to exhibit at your show and come back. And everyone likes to be treated like a special snowflake. If you have a first-time exhibitor discount, hook me up.
Sarah, any thoughts on that?
That first-time exhibitor discount for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think definitely what Adam said with making it easy, and from the show management perspective, like we really try to do that. So having an exhibitor resource center, which is like that one-stop shop to have everything you need, and the deadlines are there, and it's easy. And I love the exhibitor education as well, like helping them with the tools, like, what are some good activations you could do in the booth? What are some good ways that your sales team on site, can interact with attendees? So I think being able to provide that education as well is really good.
No, I think that's a great point. And I will say, Mark, and that's how we got connected. Some associations are finding more, bring people in, to talk about how to become good exhibitors, because I think I always say, we exhibit at a lot of trade shows. I know how to exhibit, but I've started exhibiting some of our other products, and I'm like, I've never been to a YMCA event or a learning management or an AMS event, and so even myself in the business, we need that type of education. And I think I've told one of you, I remember my first trade show, I didn't show up. I'm like, I'm not paying for carpet. What do you mean? I'm not paying for that. Michelle Mobley, I see you're on. You'll laugh about that carpet comment, since her and I just spent the weekend together forcing carpet on a couple folks. So, no, I think that was a great point. Well, let me ask, Alexandra asked, and I think this is a great question. She said, how do you feel about virtual sponsorships? Worthwhile, not gaining a lot of traction with those. So curious to the panelists.
We, from a perspective of hosting those, like we definitely didn't have very much success with our sponsors, with doing the virtual booths and those things, but that was the only option at that time. So that's when, everybody talked about kind of that pre-event and post-event value and outside of the event. When we did the virtual events, that's really what we tried to do. Like, what can we give them outside of just this virtual platform where they're kind of sitting there waiting for people to come to their virtual booth and maybe it's really slow. Like, what else are they getting? So I think for us as show management, like those are some things to think about when you're doing like a virtual sponsorship. Like it has to definitely be stuff way outside what's happening in the platform.
Great point. Any other thoughts?
We did a couple of those virtual events, and they were not particularly pleasant for the salesperson to sit waiting for somebody to wander by your virtual booth. But a couple of things we did, particularly during COVID, was we did kind of the happy hour. We would have people sign up for an event. In return, we would ship to them, and we did it through an event coordinator. We would ship to them a cocktail mixing kit. And then we would all sit around. They would get a little bit of an education from the company. Then they would get the bartender or the mixologist to teach them how to make a cocktail, and then the company would educate a little more. They were fun and very successful, and some very strong leads out of those events.
Here's another question: is as we come back, some of the things that weren't available are now back. A lot of the physical events, is that, are any of you starting to, obviously it was paused during COVID, but any of you are starting to pick up some of those events that weren't available in COVID? Curious.
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much, after the first year of a virtual show, which our first year of a virtual show was actually fantastic, but I think it was much more of our approach to it that was so successful. But once we were back 100%. We knew that the attendance was going to be down, but I think someone said earlier that we're partners with the association, and for us to show up and be there, the association gave us some cuts on what we're investing on some of these. Like we had an international resource center, and they virtually gave that to us at not for free, but at a stupid low cost, because obviously the first winter of 2021, there weren't a lot of people coming to shows, or rather 2022. But no, we're all back in 100%, minus the one that we had to cut this year. But again, that was only because the total cost went way up, and we kept our costs flat, but had to make some cuts. So
a couple of people have asked, and then Mary in particular, I think oftentimes the person that may purchase the booth space or decide on this is not the person that ends up in the booth. They're the person that just shows up and is a little surprised by the same thing. Like, so how do we get to that? How do we talk to that, that person? What's the best way to do, get that information out to that person that's actually in the booth, which is typically oftentimes the sales team? Any recommendations? Like, how do we get to the folks that need to know that information?
Well, so our events coordinator usually puts together a know before you go package, and it's great. There's a trade show next week in Chicago, and CubeCon, and the know before you go package was fantastic. But one of the things that I find helpful is whoever's working with our marketing team comes by and gives us their business card and tells us, hey, here's how you reach me if you have any issues or questions or problems or comments or praise. Send me a text, send me an email at this number. And I've used the number before. It's been very helpful. So I think that goes a long way, and that is something that I like to see at trade shows as the person standing in the booth all day.
I have a weird idea. I think I'm of the belief that incentive drives behavior. What show organizers could do to educate the people going to the trade show is, if any badged person, right, they have to sign up for their badge, you have to fill out some kind of form. I push submit, and then there's a link that says, hey, get a $50, $25 Starbucks gift card, whatever it is, to complete this training module. and build out just like a really easy training module. I'm a former Salesforce guy, so you can build it on Trailhead, super cheap, and have them go through the training, the video, whatever it is, small quiz at the end. Once you pass the quiz, here's your virtual $25 Starbucks gift card. And especially if it's the salespeople you're trying to get to be trained, no salesperson is going to take themselves away from selling just for education. So incentivize them.
I've seen a couple, Lisa, I'm hoping I pronounced your name right, from APWA. They've created an exhibitor survival guide for the shows that they send out pre-show to registered reps, as well as deliver them to the exhibitors as they're setting up. It's done wonders for all these years.
Yeah, we actually do that. So we do an on-site sponsor exhibitor guide. Then we drop it off at the booth as well. We have it in the exhibitor resource center. We do drop in office hours. So once a week for like 30 minutes, sponsors can drop in and ask any questions that they have. We also collect all contacts. And obviously I know it can change, but we'll collect like who's the planning contact, who's the on-site contacts. And then we do a booth training as well before the event. And send that out. So of course you're going to miss people. And like Adam said, he's not going to be pulled away to do that education, but we try to do all those different things to catch everybody. But of course there's going to be times where people just don't show up, but I love that, incentivizing them to do that.
I even too, it was a recommendation since Michelle's on this weekend, sending out runners to remind people to do their rebook or things, because I think we get on site and all that just goes out the window. And I think the more that we can help them. There's been a lot of talk about the exhibitor lounge. And I think that's a nice way to offer exhibitors. I will throw out, since she's on here too, one of my favorite things, and I just saw it this weekend, is, that awkward time, when you're packing up your booth and you can't get your stuff and you're waiting for, the GSC to come get it. They invite exhibitors back for Wait for the Crate. So while you're waiting, they spend it with the sales team. And having just done this, it's amazing how much more booth space they sold, interactions with the sales team. So anything you can do to, we all love a free cocktail, right?
Oh my gosh, I want to implement that for our events. I love that so much.
Yeah, it is. So credit to Michelle there. So Lisa, if you guys, as I see questions on that, if you just send, we'll try to package up this webinar, but I see some people sharing emails. Yes, that's what's great. If you've got opportunities, and thank you to my panelists for sharing things too. We have a couple minutes for a couple more questions as we start to think about next year. I'm going to ask it, what should organizers and event organizers stop doing? What are the things that just, drive you nuts as exhibitors? And be honest.
Paying for carpet. It's ridiculous. I'm not paying. Just if you want to charge me $500 for carpet, just include it in my booth fee. Like the distaste in my mouth is just like, just give me one price to go. It's crazy.
Hey, Simone, good to see you. I see her jumped in here too. I see lots of friends. Randy, or Billy, I need to come down and do exhibitor education in Orlando. I love Orlando. I said that last time, but now I have a reason to come. All right, other things we should stop doing as show organizers.
I don't know. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say one of the things, like a lot of the things that our sponsors talk about is definitely like when you have specific show hours, don't have things to drive them to that's outside of that show, which seems so obvious, right? But it's like, here's your lunch hours, but hey, we have lunch in another room. Or if you have exclusive hours, that's just time for the sponsors or exhibitors. Then what are you bringing in there to drive people there? Like, are you having food and beverage? Like, what is going to make them come versus just take a break? So there's a lot of things like that. And we do turnkey booths. So we include everything with it, but obviously that costs a lot more money, but definitely like having to pay for carpet or lead retrieval, some of those things that you can really package in, like I think is such a good point. Just make it easy.
Yeah, Shelley brought that up, the turnkey booth, everything mostly is included. Yeah, like make me think less. Again, I was the guy that showed up and I didn't want to buy carpet because I thought it was ridiculous. But
focus on your artwork that you want to put on the booth that we'll print for you and set up. Like, don't worry about everything else that's going to be there. We'll take care of it.
Mark, go ahead, Randy.
Condensing the amount of time, sure, we want as much exposure as we can, but being there till 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night is excruciating, especially if you're the person standing there at the booth from 9 o'clock in the morning on. So I think just, getting things a little more condensed and consolidated and back to that opportunity to socialize and network, later in the day.
Christina just said the same. You say in shows at 4:30, not 6 or 7 unless there's a happy hour.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I guess I would say having sufficient passes for the booth size. We go to our 50 by 50, we get a stupid amount of passes. It's great. We get 100 for those, and it's more than enough for our needs. But our 20 by 20, we get 8, and we ended up having to buy 4 of the passes. And this was the show that was about $1,200 a piece, and they gave us 2 at half cost, and then we had to buy 1 at full cost at $1,200 to have someone come, one of our sales team members, just to be there and sell. So I guess I would say make sure that you really evaluate how many passes you're giving them, and I get, don't overdo it, but at the same time, that really hurt when we wanted to add that 11th person, and that then put us into the full price of a cost of a ticket of $1,200 to bring someone to try to help us sell.
Yeah, and we're experiencing that with the event we're going to be in Chicago. We don't have the adequate number of people because we're trying to balance technical people, subject matter experts, and salespeople. And now all of a sudden, they're long days, so we're trying to rotate through so that somebody's not stuck there, especially a salesperson, because they've got to go sell in addition to being on the trade show floor. So that's a huge thing for us too, Mark.
Yeah, and just comp the people that are putting up the booth. We had one of those tickets that we had to buy was the person setting up our booth, and they said, well, if they don't want to be on show floor hours, you don't have to pay for it. But I want them there every once in a while in case there's a problem or in case I need something. So I don't want them stuck outside the door if all of a sudden my internet is stopped working or something like that. So don't make those people pay for a pass to come to the show.
Yeah, and I think also if you have speaking opportunities within your sponsorship or your exhibit package, then add, a pass for the speakers, because I've seen that a lot where that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Adam, go ahead.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have a lot of exposure to different shows. I only have my limited experience, but this particular show did not give us the attendee list ahead of time. And I would have really appreciated that attendee list to upload into LinkedIn and run an ad campaign to say, hey, we're going to be at the show, stop by our booth. This is what we're going to be talking about. This is our activation. It would have, I think, put us in a better place to succeed and get even more ROI. So I think all of us have said, we want ROI. We want this to pay. We want it to be worth it. Help us help ourselves get that ROI by giving us the attendee list ahead of time so we can pre-market and let these people know we're going to be there and where we're going to be.
Oh, the attendee list. That's a hot button issue. Luckily, we only have 3 minutes because I'm not going down that road today. No, but it is. I think everyone struggles with that.
Yeah.
How do I know who's coming when you can't tell me? But, Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I want to, Randy, you bring up a good point I want to ask in the last couple of seconds, in the last couple of minutes, actually, is, because some of you play different roles, but what are your sales team thinking about events from this past year, this year? What kind of feedback are you getting from them? Because again, sometimes they're the ones that are deciding, other than, the ROI, what their feedback is.
Yeah, I think it back to the quality, because we're the ones that have to be, we have to act on the prospect, right? We have to follow up, and having, a salesperson be able to put good notes into the lead capture system so that when they hand that off to their colleague in California or their colleague in Texas, there's some notes and then we can get on a call and, oh yeah, I remember I talked to Exxon about this and that and the other thing, and you should bring that up. So I think that having, that ability to jog our memory, because, we're the ones that are going to follow up on this. And if they're not quality leads, and if that's not being communicated well to the other members of the sales team, then we're probably not going to be as successful coming back to your show.
Yeah, that's a great point. I feel like that's the sort of handoff that, ultimately sometimes we judge the ROI on these events. But if we're not setting the sales team up to be successful and they're not activating, it creates that sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. Any other thoughts on how sales is managed on the last minute here?
I have one thing that I can add to that. So our show changed format. So we had our opening welcome reception on Monday night. So education was Monday and Tuesday, and the show opens on Wednesday. And we're the sponsor of the welcome reception on Monday night. So our whole sales team wanted to come there, be part of that, see their customers, but then they had nothing to do on Tuesday, and all their customers were in education. So consider them if you have a break, like this show has. Of one thing that we mentioned to our association is make sure you have some education for them, whether it's our own sales people or the distributor sales reps, to make sure you have education. So that's something that they added this year. I mean, I saw two of my salespeople walking through the hotel and their towels coming from the pool while I'm coming back from a meeting. And I was like, why? Like, this shouldn't even be a thing. They should be out there being able to maximize their time here. So,
or allow the salespeople to go to these education events, because, I learn a lot from, a lot of times it's a speaker from either a thought leader or a speaker from another organization that I may not compete with, but I'm adjacent to, and I learn a lot from doing some of that.
That's a great point. I think we sometimes try to keep exhibitors and sponsors away from education, and really we should start. I think the more we blur those lines between the education floor and the show floor, is better. And I would agree. I forget who already said it, but I find that a lot of events, we'll put the keynote speaker up against the opening night reception in the trade show hall, and then expect results. Well, it is 3 in the East. I see lots of claps and hearts. I can't thank you all enough. Like I said, we have more. I mean, we got through my questions, but hopefully got through most of everybody's here. Thank you all for providing so much information. I'm sure some of them will probably connect with you afterwards. I think this group should connect. And like I said, I think Sarah, maybe we've lined up a couple more speakers for her podcast, which is awesome. But thank you all so much. Thank you everybody for attending. What a great event. Good luck in 2024. Somebody raised their hand. I could stay on for another second if anyone. I think Linda's raised her hand somehow, or maybe she's waving. I don't know. Well, thank you all so much. Feel free to send us your questions. Feel free to email directly. I can connect you after this. I know, Nancy, you've asked. We'll try to coordinate a lot of the assets. Mark shared some things. Like I said, we'll try to send that out. And thank you all so much for joining.
Thanks everyone.
Everyone.
See you, everybody. Thanks again.